No matter what people tell you, you can do big things by finding your purpose and by serving people. Welcome to the Inspired Money Podcast, where we explore positive money stories. I'm Andy, host and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. If you want to shift your perspectives on money and use your money for good to make a bigger impact, subscribe right now and hit that bell to get notifications of future videos. You'll get interviews like this one and money tips. Today we're talking with international best-selling author, Dr. John Demartini. He's a leading human behavior expert, educator, consultant, and founder of the Demartini Institute. Dr. Demartini spent much of his childhood being told by his teachers and even his parents that he'd never amount to anything. He has since studied over 30,000 books and delivered keynotes, seminars, and workshops in over 100 countries. He's authored more than 40 books on topics including corporate and financial empowerment, self-development, relationships, and social transformation. He's appeared on Larry King Live and regularly contributes to Oprah Magazine. In this episode, you'll learn how to guide kids to find their purpose, why purpose combined with serving others can be so powerful, and the importance of gratitude in defining being rich or wealthy. Now let's get inspired with Dr. John Demartini. Dr. John Demartini, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Shining shoes with my father, and he would give me 25 cents if I shined them where I could have a nice shine on it and do it perfectly. That was my first little money exchange. But I do have an interesting story at 9 that might be interesting to the viewers. I don't know. But if I could share that story, it would be probably fun.
Would love to hear it.
When I was 9, I went to my dad because I wanted to buy a baseball, a glove, and a bat because I like baseball. And I asked him, what could I do to earn some money so I could buy those things? And he said, well, did you mow the yard? And I said, yes, sir. Did you edge the sidewalk? Yes, sir. Did you sweep the garage and the driveway? Yes, sir. Did you clip the hedges? Yes, sir. Did you to pull the weeds? Yes, sir. Did you do the shining of the shoes? Yes, sir. Did you clean your room? Yes, sir. He said, son, I don't have anything else that needs to be done here. So if you want to make some money, I can't give you money without doing a service. You're going to have to go to the neighbors. So I started walking up and down the street, and I found the Evans place was a little unruly. And I walked up to the door and I asked if I could, mow their yard and clip their hedges and fix up their yard. And they said yes. They said, how much? And I didn't prepare that. And I just threw a number out there, and it was probably low, and they took it. And so I did. And afterwards, I was stung by bees and had blisters and was sunburned. But I earned the money, and I was able to buy my baseball, my glove, and my bat. And my dad said, I see you got this equipment. Where did you get it? And I said, well, I did what you told me. I went to the yards in the neighborhood, and I did my service. And he said, and what equipment did you use? And I said, well, I used the equipment in the garage. He said, son, I have to teach you a lesson about business. You have to pay for that. You can't just use somebody's equipment without paying for it and negotiate that. Now, what exactly did you do, and how much did you use it, and how long did you use it? And he charged me a bit of money for that. And that kind of eroded because I'd already spent it. So my dad said, well, that'll teach you to make sure that you set aside your money for your taxes and set aside money for your employees and your equipment and depreciation. And he was trying to teach me how to be a little entrepreneur. And so I decided, oh, wow, that's kind of let down. So I had to go and do 3 more yards plus those costs to get caught up to break even on the deal. And so I'm now working and feeling like I'm a slave a bit to the money, as many people are because they haven't learned to manage it. And lo and behold, I had a kid walking, or actually riding his bicycle as I was pushing a lawnmower one day, and he was talking. I said, I got an idea. I said, how would you like to make a little bit of money? If you push this lawnmower and do the yard, I'll pay you 50 cents. Well, I got 3 kids, some to do the sweeping and the raking, and the one to do the edging and one to do the mowing. And I got them to activity, and I charged them 50 cents and 50 cents and 25 cents for those. And I closed the deals, and I started making money, and I paid my dad, and I saved some money. And then I bought the things that I wanted to buy, a golf set and a football, and I was into sports. And my dad said, I'm proud of you, son, but I see that you've now hired some kids in the neighborhood. Well, within about another 2 weeks, I had three groups of kids, of three, and I borrowed the Zubrods and the Mallows equipment. And so I had now 9 employees, and I was making on average on a corner lot, I was making about 4 to 450 net. And on the other ones, I was making around 250 net. And so I ended up on a big day closing and netting $45, which today would be around 700 bucks because this is 1963. And if you had a kid that was 9 years old making $700 a day, you'd probably be pleased. You'd let him stay at the house. So my dad said, "Well, son, you're doing great. You're learning about business. You're learning how to pay and manage things. But there's one thing you haven't done is you haven't set aside money for your savings. And if you work for money all your life, you're going to be its slave. If you have it work for you, you're going to be its master." And he bought me a coin collection set and a piggy bank as a gift. And I started filling in the coins because those days they gave you coins. And I filled in the coins and started collecting the coins. And I started a piggy bank in 1963. Now that piggy bank sits in my 52nd story building in Houston, Texas, the original piggy bank with the original coins still sitting there. I've never opened, he never gave me a key. I never had the strength to open that bank. It was a hard, firm little bank. You couldn't just throw it on the ground and open it. And it's got a fortune in there with coins all the way back to 1905. And I kept it there because I wanted to keep the memory of him saying, you have to think long term about money and not just keep having immediate gratification destroy it. Well, then what happened is he saw I was saving and he was inspired by that. And he says, now I got to teach you one more step on freedom. And I said, what's that? He says, I want you to know what it's like to buy your freedom. From now on, I'm going to charge you $7.50 a week to live at the home, to pay for food, clothing, and rent. And then, but that means you can now go on your new bicycle that you bought and go anywhere, anytime, as long as you're home by 9 o'clock at night. So you can get up as early as you want, you can drive as far as you want, but you just got to be home at 9 o'clock. That's the only responsibility you have, and now you have freedom. And my dad made me accountable because I had learning disabilities, and he knew that he better train me in how to be an entrepreneur because I wasn't going to be able to do it in academia. And I'm very grateful. My dad gave me a harsh reality about what the true world is at a young age, and I'm very grateful for that. So that was my second, besides shining shoes, that was my second introduction of money, and I'm very grateful for my dad for teaching me how to be accountable and have a work ethic and be of service orientation, because it's true, if you care about humanity enough to serve and do it in fair exchange, you're rewarded in life.
Your dad gave you very practical business and money lessons at this early age. Was your dad a great business person?
I would say he was above middle class, just slightly above middle class. That would be the thing. We lived in a small house, and then we moved to a plot of land where we had a little bit bigger house. I wouldn't say he's, wealthy. He wasn't a millionaire or anything like that, but he was good at saving his money. He good at being frugal and making sure you buy priority items and not just splurge and, live beyond your means. He's a practical man, but I wouldn't say he was wealthy. I don't think on the standards that I was blessed to be able to create, would he be classified as ultra wealthy or anything. But he was a man that cared about people, worked hard, and saved his money and invested it, and would be just above middle class. I'd say he's above middle class, though.
Today, you're a human behavioral specialist and an educator. I've seen videos where it looks like you are educating casts of thousands. You mentioned that you had learning disabilities. So after making after building this like lawn mowing empire, it wasn't all easy. You had both physical challenges and learning disabilities. For our listener who doesn't know your story, can you share some of those times, those difficult times, and this huge transformation that you experienced?
Well, I was born with my arm and leg turned in. So the way I was positioned, I guess it was torqued in like a pigeon arm, pigeon leg. And from I think around 1.5 to 4, I had to wear braces on my arm and leg, kind of like a Forrest Gump kind of thing. I also had speech impediment because I was going to a speech pathologist also around 1.5. I remember going to that building all the time and wearing strings and buttons in my mouth and doing all these exercises and stuff. And then when I got into elementary school in first grade, my teacher said to my parents, they brought my parents in and said, "I'm afraid your son's got learning problems and speaking problems and reading problems. I don't think he's ever going to be able to read or write or communicate effectively. Probably won't go very far in life nor amount to anything." And I think that's part of the catalyst why my dad wanted to make me street smart. I mean, I think he would have done it anyway, but I think he really had an emphasis on trying to make me self sufficient. And I did pretty well until they moved from Houston, Texas to Richmond, Texas, because I made it through school by asking smart kids questions, which I'm known for today, my questions. And that worked until we moved to the small town where we had a low socioeconomic area. The school was very low socioeconomic, and I didn't have a bunch of smart kids to ask questions to, so I ended up dropping out of school. So I ended up being, I guess you could say, sort of a street kid, odd job, whatever I could do, mow yards. I did handy, whatever I could just to kind of get by. But I left home and then I picked up surfing in Texas, which is not the surf capital. And I ended up at 14 with my parents' blessings. I went off to California. Didn't have any members of family there, but I just went off. I said, I want to ride the biggest waves in the world and I want to go surfing. And my mom and dad were very unique. They wanted me to live my life and be inspired by whatever it is I wanted to do. So I went off surfing and I went and I hitchhiked to California and I hitchhiked down to Mexico and I went back to California and then I panhandled on the streets and did odd jobs or whatever it would to get some money to go to Hawaii. And I flew to Hawaii at 15 and I lived in, first, I didn't know where to stay. I didn't have enough money to do anything except stay under a bridge, then in a park bench, then in a bathroom, and then in an abandoned car. I kept social climbing. And then I almost died doing it because of surf and some other things that I was doing there, and I almost died at strychnine cyanide poisoning. And luckily, a lady found me in my tent, took me to a health food store to get some decent food in me, which led me to a little talk at a yoga class to try to recover from my strychnine poisoning. And there I met a teacher named Paul C. Bragg, who one night, 1 hour, with his one message, man, he got to me. And for the first time in my life, after listening to him speak, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could learn how to read, and someday I could learn how to speak properly and become intelligent. And I had a dream about doing it, but I never thought it was going to happen. But that night, something shifted, and I went on a journey and started to go down a new path, which was a non-easy path because I tried to go back and go back to school, and I failed at first. And then I started to read a dictionary with my help of my mom, and we practiced. I moved back to Texas, and we practiced 30 words a day until my vocabulary was strong enough to pass school. And I worked, and then I never stopped reading. I became voluminous in reading once I learned how to read, and I wanted to catch up. And today, still to this day, I read and read and read and read. I've read 30,508 books now.
In what sounds like a fairly short amount of time, like a this brief encounter with Paul Bragg, what did he say that had that much of an impact?
He was a very amazing guy, amazing enthused guy. He impacted a lot of people. I mean, Steve Jobs was impacted by him. Donald Trump was impacted by him. Jack LaLanne was impacted by him. The Kellogg's corporation was. He impacted a lot of people. He just had a way with him that was so certain and so enthused that it was kind of contagious. But he said that we have a body, mind, and soul, and the body must be directed by the mind, and the mind must be guided by the soul, and that if we want to maximize our potential in life, and that we need to set goals for ourselves, our family, our community, our city, our state, our nation, our world, and beyond for 100, 120 years. And that what we think about, what we visualize, what we talk to ourselves about, how we feel about ourselves, and the actions we take every single day can determine our destiny. And if we take command on it, which we always have the power to take command on it, we can make anything that we have in our hearts and dreams become true. And nobody ever talked to me like this. Nobody. All I was told is I had learning problems and I would never read. And so all of a sudden, somebody shifted that and go, whoa. And so that night I had a dream. I had a dream to do what he did for me with as many people as I could across the world. And that's what I do every day.
After having teachers tell you that you just weren't going to be able to read, how did that feel?
Well, I mean, I turned that into being the clown, the class clown. I turned that into asking the smartest kids questions so I would get enough information to try to pass. And I did. I passed, but I wasn't academic. But and it taught me how to ask questions, and it felt, like I'm second. I'm not first. That's why I went into sports. I excelled in sports because I could. Once I got out of my braces, I just wanted to run, and I developed running skills and balance skills to try to compensate for the academic, challenges. So, you adapt. You just go about your business, and you just assume that's it is. And for 10 years, I assumed that that's what was my destiny. I assumed I was going to make surfboards and live on the North Shore of Oahu and ride big waves because I rode 40-foot waves and big waves, and so I just assumed that.
There are worse places to live.
Well, I went back there last year on my 65th birthday because I made a commitment when I was 16 to surf Pipeline and Laniakea when I turned 65. So when I turned 65, I'm 66 now. When I turned 65, I went to the North Shore and I surfed big waves. I got prepared and I did it. And as a 49-year goal that I worked on. And so I can't complain. Yeah, I did it. So
So I know that you've studied thousands of years of knowledge from theologians, philosophers, business magnates. In all that research that you've done, what's your definition of money?
a measurement of sustainable fair exchange between two individuals demonstrated as a transaction. And having the worthiness, the credit worthiness that people believe in you in advance of seeing the actual service.
It sounds like it goes back to those simple days when you were working at your neighbor's yard.
Yeah, I can't complain. My dad gave me a gift there. I tried to. I think I tried to drop my kids off on the freeway and try to get them to be accountable, but they end up calling an Uber and charging my credit card.
You haven't been able to pass down that same money and business lesson to your kids?
All three of my children save and invest. So I was blessed to do that. They have varying degrees of work ethic. One is having a baby coming, and she's uh, looks like she's going to marry wealthy. So she's has a little bit different work ethic. My oldest definitely has a work ethic, and she's investing, and she's doing great service. My son is working on his YouTube video world, and he's got about 32,000 people that view him. And so yeah, I've made them as accountable. I think I could probably have been a little tougher, but I definitely inspired them to do it. I think Albert Einstein said the greatest teacher is exemplification. If you exemplify an inspired life and manage your life wisely and do a service and be dedicated to service and have fulfillment in life, I think that the Pygmalion effect, the chameleon effect, and the mirror neurons tend to get rubbed off on the kids.
Now, I've heard you speak about finding one's purpose and fulfillment. And I'm just wondering, like, where does money fall into that when someone's trying to figure out where they're going or what their purpose is?
Well, I think that every human being has a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most to least important in their life. And my observation of that after 48 years of teaching, 43 years of just studying values, it's unique. It's like a fingerprint, and each one has that, and it's evolving and changing, but it's whatever it is at any moment, they live by a set of priorities. And whenever they live by their highest values and fill their day with the highest priorities, the most meaningful and purposeful things they can do, the things that they feel that their identity revolves around, they have the greatest self-worth. And that's the thing where they wake up in their creativity, the most ingenious contribution of wanting to serve. And an individual that does that, they don't try to avoid challenges in life. They tend to find challenges that inspire them to solve. That's one of an executive function. I always say leaders are pursuing challenges that inspire them, and followers are always trying to avoid challenges that don't. But what they do is they pursue problems in the world that they want to solve and contribute to using their genius and their creativity and their original thinking. And when they're doing that, living by what's really valuable to them, they have a tendency to do that. And they tend to want to do that in a sustainable, objective, fair exchange, a fair exchange, as I just did a presentation this morning on. And when they do, that's when they're remunerated most fairly. And whenever you exaggerate yourself with pride, you tend to talk down to people and don't meet their needs. Whenever you tend to minimize yourself in shame, you tend to altruistically sacrifice yourself and profits for the people. But if you have authenticity and you're really in a place where you're in a state of equanimity, which is an inspired state and a true state, an authentic state, you tend to have a subtle sense, an intuitive sense for what is fair exchange, which creates sustainable desire to continue to do business with you. And that state is probably the most significant state of living purposefully. Because when you have something you can't wait to get up in the morning and do that inspires you, that makes a difference, that feels that's the most fulfilling thing there is in life. I mean, when you go on and do your podcasts, you know that that's fulfilling when you know you get feedback from people and it's made a difference. And that people who live congruently with what they value most, they eventually discover that, and they eventually realize that that's really the path. Money without meaning leads to debauchery, but money with meaning leads to humanitarian philanthropic work. And I think that that's not as a sacrifice, not as a guilt that you want to compensate for something, but as just a knowledge to have sustainable fair exchange, because that's what grows business and grows the economy and grows job opportunities and grows taxes and grows the overall standard. Hubert Hal Bancroft, in his book called The Book of Wealth, which is a 10-volume set that I have, which only 400 books collections were made originally, and then another 250 later. He said that there were three things common to the wealthiest people through history over the last 6,700 years. They had traced them and studied them. And these are the people that built the great, hanging walls of Babylon, the great Giza pyramids and the China Wall and these kind of people. And he said that they had three things common. They felt by divine providence and human sovereignty, they were designed to serve vast numbers of people. They felt called to serve vast numbers of people. They really felt that they're here to do something that's massively impacting the world. Number two is they felt that they had transcended the attachments to money. It's not something you have greed over. It's not something you have avoidance over. It's something you respect and understand. It's a measurement of the sustainability of fair exchange. And then the third thing is that they wanted to raise the standards of society by investing in inspiration and the highest quality contributions that people made in each industry, and not to rescue desperation. And that meant that they would invest in the highest quality things because that gave incentive for people to raise the standards of the quality of things for quality management. And those three things in that book, I found watching and doing speaking and consulting around the world in different countries, 154 countries now. I've watched that pattern repeat. So I think it's great truth. And so I try to encourage people to live by that, because it does make a difference. And there's absolutely no reason why, no matter what you've been through, what you've gone through, what you're experiencing, there's no reason why you can't live a very fulfilled life financially. Absolutely fulfilled life financially, and have money work for you as a master, not you working for it as its slave.
Yeah, you did mention that phrase that you didn't want to be a slave of the money. In your coaching and consulting, can those traits that are common among the super uber wealthy, can those be taught?
Well, it's not so much taught. They spontaneously emerge in people when they are congruent with what they value most. I've been blessed to do presentations on leadership in various countries, and people ask me the common question, is it something innate or is it something you develop? And the answer is, sometimes what we think is innate was just developed very early, and they happen to be congruent. I find that each individual, when they start doing the highest priority actions that are deeply meaningful to them, start to emerge leadership skills, self-worth, expanded space and time horizons, visionary perspectives. The blood glucose oxygen goes into the forebrain, activates inspired vision, strategic planning, the desire to execute those plans, and self-governance. And those traits emerge and allow leadership and the skills of wealth management to go up. And so I've seen people that have had no history for years, 20, 30, 40 years of their business, nothing, and go in there and identify what their values are and restructure and start to prioritize them and get them to do a simple thing, because they have control over their perception, decisions, and actions, and they can prioritize the perceptions, prioritize their decisions, and prioritize their actions. And developing that one habit can change a person's life and move them into a position where all of a sudden they value fair exchange, they value themselves, and they value serving humanity. So those three things change their destiny. The hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny, I'd say.
So I hear you saying that I should not push my 3 kids into a specific profession because it should be lucrative. What's your advice for helping a child to find their purpose and develop that?
Well, it's already there. All you have to do is pay attention to it. Look at how they fill their space. Look at how they spend their time. Look at what they're energized by and inspired and enthused by. Look at what they spend their money on when they get money. Look at what they're most organized, where they're most disciplined spontaneously. What do they think about, visualize, talk to themselves inwardly about, talk to other people externally about? What really inspires them? What's common to the people that their heroes are? What exactly that the goals that they have that are actually making come true? And what is it they love spontaneously learn about? And look at what I call the value determinants that help take a subjective assumption about how society says you should be and looks at what you're really driven by intrinsically, and finding out what that is and giving them permission to be their authentic self accordingly, and then showing them how that, no matter what that is, there's a way of making a fortune out of it by serving ever greater numbers of people. I have a story that's a mind blower. Can I share an absolutely funny and mind blowing story?
Please do.
I had a lovely lady attending my signature program called the Breakthrough Experience, where I help people break through whatever they perceive as limiting them in their life and get on with life. See things on the way, not in the way. And here's a lady who's in her late 20s, and I asked her a simple question: what is it you would absolutely love to do with your life? Just out of curiosity. She goes, I don't know. I said, well, wait a minute. No, I'm asking you a question. Be accountable. What would you absolutely love to do? What do you spontaneously love doing? She says, I love spontaneously spending time with my dog. I said, okay. She says, I got a Chihuahua and I love my dog and I spend time with her. I said, how could you get handsomely and beautifully paid to spend time with your dog? She went blank. I have no idea. I said, answer the question. How could you get handsomely and beautifully paid to spend time with your dog? She goes, my dog's cute. Maybe I could, if people wanted a picture with him, which they do commonly, I could charge for it. I said, okay. What are the highest priority actions you could do today to make that happen? And she goes, I could do this and this and this. And what obstacles might you run into and how you would solve them in advance? And I went through a series of questions to hold her accountable, and she got creative. And she left the program on Sunday and contemplated that. On Monday, she took her dog into New York, into Central Park, because she lived in New York, walked to the park. And for the first time in her life, when somebody came up and said, can I get a picture of your dog? This is before iPhones. This is back when they actually have cameras. Can I take a picture of the dog? She said, well, yeah, but that'll be $5. And somebody paid her $5. And so she walked home telling the dog, hey, you made your keep today, $5. But because of that creativity, and she got a reward for it, she went in, got on the floor and sat in her closet and started rummaging around with stuff and found some red elastic material that she could make a little outfit for him out of, and got some sunglasses and put a elastic strip on it and taught him how to walk on his feet a bit. And the next time she went into Central Park a couple days later, she walked him in there with a red tube on so people would notice him, because red would draw attention, put the sunglasses on him, and more people wanted to take a picture, and she made $15. And then she got back and she said, this is creative. I'm going to start making different outfits for him that people are going to want to take a picture with. And if you go online and you look her up, Karen Beal, you'll see that turned into $125 every time she went, because people used to just go, I want a picture. I got to get a picture of that. And so she dressed him up as the Pope and dressed him up as a turkey and dressed him up in all kind of things and got these outfits designed for him, got a card making that she's his agent, and made him like a model. Well, there's this guy sitting there having a sandwich in the park laughing his butt off, right? Think that's brilliant. She's cleaning up. And he walks over to her and says, I think I'm involved in direct marketing and in television ads and stuff. I think I could use your dog in a commercial. Well, this dog, they signed a deal with Milk-Bone Dog Biscuit, Eli, and they did a $2.2 million deal. She then went on and did two other commercials and made five something million. Then ended up having a mom and doggies and mom shows, three different series of them, and got to be on the Globe Awards, the Academy Awards. This dog became, next to Gidget, which is a Taco Bell dog, became one of the most famous dogs in New York and in LA. Well, she retired with $25 million with that dog. Now, what's interesting is the dog died 7 years later. She got another dog that looked identical to him, trained him, made him continue, and then that died, and they did it again. For 21 years, she made millions out of this dog, and he became one of the things. And they actually named one of the penthouses that she owns in his name. So the dog owns the penthouse, and that was another thing that they used for the media. So here's a lady that started out with nothing and turned it into millions, and now has a foundation because she asked quality questions. Quality of your life is based on quality of the questions. And I believe that if you do something that serves people's needs, whatever it may be, even if it's filling their needs to want to take a picture with a dog, there's a fortune to be made. It's just how you get creative about it.
A dog celebrity. I love it.
That's what happened.
A series of dog celebrities.
Yeah.
Well, she found her purpose, and it sounds like
Well,
it
he
had a
found
happy
his
ending.
purpose too. Both of them.
Her purpose was to be a dog agent.
Exactly.
Going back to your experience, it's like you had been told growing up that you weren't going to be able to read. And then that changed. You suddenly became a voracious reader, learning, and you were on this mission to inspire as many people as you could. What did that process look like as you were doing it? Because I would imagine that you don't have all the answers on day one. It's a process.
The first student I ever had was a 375-pound Afro-American woman that walked up to me in a library at Wharton Junior College, where I was trying to go back to school. And I was doing yoga, because I learned some yoga when I was in Hawaii. And I was doing some yoga behind some shelves where I didn't think anybody was going to pay attention. And she came up and asked me if I could teach her that. And she was not exactly in shape to do yoga like I was, but she really wanted to learn it. So having somebody actually walk up to you and ask you to help them and to teach them something was one of the most inspiring moments of my life. To think that I had something to offer somebody. Wow. Shortly after that, I was sitting outside meditating, trying to practice in 100-degree weather, imagining myself in ice so I would be able to not sweat, just to practice overruling my sensory ruling of my body. And this Persian gentleman kind of walked up to me and asked me, could you teach me whatever you're doing, this meditation thing? And I said, okay. Now, he's been a student since 1973, still. And he was the second student I had. Then when I was in the library one time, I lived in the library once I learned to read, and about 16 people got out of a class and came in there and asked me to tutor them on basic algebra, because I was learning algebra. But I wanted to go to school more than I think the rest of the students. They were just taking it for granted, the parents, oh, you're going to go to college. I really, 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 really wanted to learn and overcome my learning problems. So I was driven in school. And when I had that class came out and asked me to teach them and tutor them for a test on algebra, the exhilaration and the fulfillment of knowing that I could make a contribution like that and somebody would actually think that maybe he has something to offer and say was meaningful. And I started tutoring. And then when I went to the University of Houston, I started doing outdoor yoga, and people would gather around and ask questions. And we'd have a philosophical question and answer thing most every day under the trees. And that would swell to 100, 150 people, sometimes 400 people would gather. And then if it would rain, we'd go into the cafeteria. And people would just ask questions. And I would love it because I would either write the questions down if I didn't know it, and I'd have it prepared for the next day, and they'd come back. but I was just anything that would allow me to stretch my mind and to give me reason to learn it, I was taking advantage of. And I was serving people. When I went on to professional school, I started teaching literally 7 days a week. And every night I'd get up at 2 in the morning. I would speed read. By then I was speed reading. And I would speed read and I would devour a bunch of books. And I would then give a presentation on it that very night and do the same thing the next morning. And I just kept expanding that. And then that led to the programs and talks around the city, to a radio and television series. I had a TV show, three of those. And I just kept going. I just didn't ever stop. And then it went around the state, and then the nation, and now all over the world. So I just never stopped on my dream. I have a vision in my office. If you walk in my office, you're going to see this painting of me standing in front of 1 million people in a giant square with every major iconic large building in the background from every major city around the world in the background, painted by Andrew Tischler. It's in there, and people go, whoa, this is an amazing painting. But it's me speaking as the original vision that I saw when I was 17, that I wanted to overcome my speaking ability and try to make some contribution in the planet.
You had this calling to be a teacher. And in those early days, it sounds like you were willing to teach whatever people asked you, whether it was algebra or yoga.
Didn't matter.
And as long as you were the teacher who was just one step ahead and could share that knowledge with people, you were open to that. At what point do you have to narrow your focus and specialize?
Well, that's a great question. When I met Paul Bragg, he mentioned the term universal laws, which is sort of a broad thing, general laws. So when I moved back to Texas, I looked up, what is that? What is a universal law? What is a general law? A natural law, they called it. Aristotle called it natural law. And so I looked it up and I read up about it. And it took me back to what was called the logos. It was kind of a theological term in the philosophical, metaphysical term, the order of the universe. And so I said, okay, I want to know the laws of the universe. So I made a list in the dictionary and encyclopedia of every known ology that was known at the time that I could find in the encyclopedia. And I made a circle, around it, and then I extracted it and I listed them alphabetically. And then I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and see if I can read 100 books on every known ology to try to find the most universal principles that will stand the test of time to build a body of knowledge that I can teach. So when I teach something, it'll stand the test of time. I don't want something fluffy. I don't want some just opinions. I wanted to synthesize, syncretize the dialectic of information from all the opinions and find some core thread that was there in all the different disciplines. And so I went on a mission, polymathic mission to do that, so I can make sure that when I teach something, I feel confident about that information and that they can rely on that. That's been my dream, and I'm still that way. And it all revolves around the evolvement of human consciousness, maximizing human awareness and potential in each of the areas of life that people want to pursue. And I found 7 primary areas that people want to pursue, and just do everything I can to help people live an extraordinary, magnificent life, which I fully believe you can do.
What are the 7 areas?
The 7 areas are what I call the inspired quest or spiritual quest, where you're inspired by some mission that you feel is your calling on the planet. And that's not necessarily religious. It could be. It's not necessarily religious. Although I've studied 3,000 different religions over the years, I'm not necessarily a religious person. I'm interested in people following what inspires them. Pat Falvey, who's a friend of mine from Dublin, climbed Mount Everest 4 times to the peak, climbed the biggest 7 peaks twice, went to the North and South Pole hiking, swam the Amazon River. He's an adventurist, right? That's his spiritual quest. I've seen some people that ride bicycles until it's unbelievable, and that's their spiritual quest. Mine's teaching. Rose Kennedy's, her mission statement was, I dedicate my life to raising a family of world leaders. So whatever it is that inspires you, that's your spiritual quest. Then the next one is your mind quest, and that is your mental quest. That's to wake up original ideas that serve humanity, that are ingenious and contribute vastly, kind of an unborrowed visionary of information from the mind and creating a mental genius awakening. The third one is vocational service, doing something that contributes to people that you get compensated for, that inspires you. The fourth one is the mastery of money, where you're now not its slave. You've got financial independence and you're philanthropic. The next one is a global family dynamic, where I learned that from Epictetus, dealing with Socrates and also Einstein. He says, I'm not a man of Corinth. I'm not a man of Athens. I'm a citizen of the world, a citizen of the universe. That's why I live on a ship called the world that goes around the world, because I like to make sure that I don't have any one location that's it. The earth is home. I've said for years that the universe is my playground, the world is my home, every country's a room in the house, every city's a platform to share my heart and soul. Ever since I read Aristotle and Epictetus. So then I also feel that people also want to make a difference and a contribution and be leaving a mark in society and be remembered in society, some sort of legacy, something that they want to be remembered by. So I try to help people build that. And the next one is vitality. To be beautiful, attractive, and vital, and to be something that people, would love to be around and also feel enthused by, and somebody that's beautiful or handsome from within, not necessarily without, but at least from within. And so those are the 7 areas that I specialize on the mastery of life. I specialize in doing everything I can to summarize the greatest writings by the greatest minds who ever lived in that field to help people expand and to excel in those areas. That's my dream.
The value of serving people. I know that you give back a lot working with prisons and police. Why is that part of it so important?
Well, I think because I can speak. I've been blessed to be able to speak because I practiced speaking. I wasn't at first able to do that. But able to do it, I can leverage myself and make the biggest difference speaking. And through education, you can reach the next generation. And they're receptive, and that's inspiring. And to watch, in South Africa, I had a school system that was a township that was extreme impoverished. That was the families would make $300 to $600 a year, and they didn't have a great educational thing. And I was able to do something that contributed to that, where the matric rate went from 27% pass rate to 97% pass rate. And that was inspiring to me, to make a difference and make kids be able to graduate so they could go on and to further their education. The police department, they were sometimes heroes but unrecognized. And I felt that they didn't realize how much difference that they made, and to be able to inspire them to realize the contribution that they make. People don't really, they just take it for granted. So be able to do that, to give them an inspiration and a thank you, was why that. In the prisons, a lot of people, you can touch somebody's life in a prison and change their life. I spoke to 1,000 maximum security prisoners in Krugersdorp prison in South Africa one time, where it's 3 stories underground, and they were 25 years to life sentences. These are all the toughest guys. And I shared some stories there that I had the entire room in tears of gratitude. I said, there's no matter what you've been through, no matter what your situation is, you can still make a difference right here, even in this location. And we made a difference. And so, yeah, wherever I can make a difference. I mean, I speak to governments, and I speak to corporations, and I speak, to wealthy people, celebrities. I speak to all kinds of people. But sometimes it's very touching, and it's even more inspiring when you get to touch the people you don't get to normally touch. So I like doing all the above. I like the whole spectrum because I know what it's like to be on the streets. And I know that if I've gone on the streets and just done a program on the streets before.
Dr. Demartini, it's so easy to take things for granted. Take what the law enforcement officers are doing for granted because they're always there for us. Or we see celebrities. You said that your son is an aspiring YouTuber and he's building up his audience. But we always see these different people, like somebody is a celebrity up here, somebody is unemployed and they're going through a tough time. You've talked to so many people. How different are they really?
Well, I always say, as C.S. Lewis and Samuel Beckett, the Nobel Prize winner, and many others have said throughout the ages, and Anaxagoras, that pain and pleasure is conserved through time and space. No matter who you are, you got pain and pleasure. And no matter what you do, you have support and challenge. There's always a new problem. If you ever wake up without a problem, you better get on your hands and knees and pray for one because you died. So many people, I mean, I've been in situations where I've been right there with celebrities' homes when they've got tabloid people climbing their fences and totem poles and whatever in the backyard, telephone poles, and trying to get snapshots of privacies and things. where they have their pains and their challenges, and they got to go off to an island somewhere just to get some peace of mind, and they got to pay for the private system. People think, well, oh, they live that luxury life, but they have pains and challenges that the average person would not want to have. And they have the pleasures, but they have the pains. So pain and pleasure is somewhat a conserved trait through everyone's life. I met on the Murumbamba River in Peru. We were doing down the river in a raft, and we came across this naked kids on the edge of the river. And we got down and followed them into the jungle, and we found in their little lean-to houses where their family was, and met with their families. We couldn't speak, but one of our guys could speak. And this kid was playing with mud marbles, just mud, rolled up in a marble with a stick, and beating his buddy, and they were having a blast. And I was thinking, with such little, they're having laughter. And sometimes the rich are not appreciating, they've got to have the new iPhone or otherwise they're angry. So I realized that the pain and pleasure and the expectations have a lot to do with what your fulfillment life in. And so I try to teach people, if you expect beyond your capacity to create, you're going to be unfulfilled in life. You want to make sure you come up with strategies that allow you to live up to the expectations you make. And otherwise you can be just as depressed, and you think you're rich, but you're actually impoverished because you haven't appreciated life. Real richness is the appreciation of the opportunity to serve and be rewarded.
So it sounds like gratitude is
Well,
very important.
gratitude is appreciation, and appreciation is what wealth is.
I've seen those kids too in Cambodia when I visited.
Yeah.
Kids that really were impoverished. They had so little. They were selling postcards just for change because that's going to put food on the table. But
Yeah.
tour groups walk by, and these kids, it was pure joy. They were just being kids, playing with one another, having fun, laughing, playing. It wasn't about money.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, money is not necessarily a piece of paper, or it's not just a coin. It's really the respect that you've earned, the credit you have by your integrity. You could have no money and people could owe you money, or they could owe you money, and that's a credit, and that can be valuable if you have done something of service. So I'm all for it, because we did one time, there was no really exchange vehicle. There was no, maybe shells or rice or something, but it became a more scientific system over time, and it's gone from cattle to coins to paper to plastic to electronics to now light, and now it's instantaneous internet. It's quantum entangled light around the world, right? It's quantum entangled now,
It's
but
blockchain now.
yeah, it's instantaneous systems, but that's just a way of more efficiently getting fair exchange, but it's still ultimately about fair exchange.
Dr. Demartini, I'd like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
That is totally dependent on the individual value systems. I met a woman who had a series of children. She had 5 children, and her most inspiring, highest value was raising those beautiful children and being with those children. Now, her husband, because most family dynamics lead towards androgyny, he was business oriented. So his highest value was business and finance and more education, and hers was nurturing and raising the kids and making sure those kids had a great life. So whatever is really highest on your value, whatever is really most deeply meaningful, the highly prioritized incremental momentum building actions to fulfill that, to me, is, quote, fulfillment. The success, I think, is sort of a misnomer, because sometimes the second you think you're successful, it's sort of a puffed up, proud feeling that depurposes you. And failure is sort of a humbling repurposing process. So I don't ever call myself successful. I call myself a man on a mission. It's down the center. I'd rather not take pride or shame or take credit or blame or label it success or failure. I just say that both of them are feedback mechanisms to make me authentic. And I think that every symptom in our body and our psyche and our sociology and our business is trying to get us authentic and to maintain fair exchange. So that to me is fulfillment. And I think that whatever is most meaningful to that individual, climbing a mountain or doing yoga and meditation or running a massive business or becoming the wealthiest man in the world or woman in the world or running a mining operation, whatever that is, because I've seen people absolutely inspired and fulfilled doing the whole spectrum across the world. And I think the world needs everybody with their unique values to make it work. So everybody has the capacity to do it. But the second you compare yourself to somebody else and put them on pedestals or pits, if you look down on them, you're going to exaggerate yourself. You've just lost your soul. You've lost your identity and your individuality. And the second you minimize yourself and look up to them, you've injected their values and then compared yourself like a cat to a fish, and you're going to beat yourself up. Neither one of those, that pride or that shame, it just leads to narcissism and altruism, and both of which undermine sustainable fair exchange. So I'm a man on a mission and trying to do what I can to teach the principles that will stand the test of time.
So I present to everybody Dr. John Demartini, a man on a mission. Dr. Demartini, can you tell the Inspired Money listener and viewer today where they can find out more information about you and where they can follow you?
The simplest way is just go to drdemartini.com. And there you can go and look up the media pages where there's just radio and television, newspapers, magazines. There's thousands of interviews. Or there you can go to the podcast, or you can go to the YouTube videos or whatever, or see the events where I'm going to be. But just drdemartini.com and explore that. You would almost have to be a Buddhist or an Indian mystic believing in reincarnation just to be able to read everything that's on it. It's a very busy, it's filled with lots of interviews. I'm joking a bit. I'm just joking. But, there's plenty on there for people. You could educate yourself just on that one website.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
No, thank you for great questions. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? My big takeaway was the power of finding your purpose and pairing that with how can you serve the most people. I love the story about Karen Beal and her dog Eli. She asked the quality questions. And as Dr. Demartini said, if you do something that serves people's needs, whatever that may be, even if it's filling their need to want to take a picture with a dog, there's a fortune to be made. It's just how you get creative about it. What do you think? If you agree, or maybe you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, please let me know by leaving a comment below. I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. Now for watching until the end, thank you. You made it till the end. I want to share with you an Inspired Money sticker or button. Just send me your address by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. Send me your address and I'll mail them out to you. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.